Welcome to Early Care Connection. I'm Izzy Greenberg. Today we are joined by our usual panel of experts, Merrill Gay from the Connecticut Early Childhood Alliance and Ava Bermuda Zimmerman from the Child Care for Connecticut's Future campaign. We've got a bunch of updates today. We've got a quick presentation at the beginning. I would first like to thank Sandra for providing interpretation for us, which is my reminder to slow down a little. And to remind all of you that the chat is a great place for the community to share information with each other or let us know if there are technical difficulties, but you can use the Q&A if you have questions for any of our panelists. Okay, let's get started with, we're going to do a little promotion of an interesting workshop that's coming up. Omar Dinar is here to give us some information. He's a financial advisor from Bank of America Merrill Lynch, based in Stamford, Connecticut. And he is going to be telling you all about a workshop that he's running over Zoom tomorrow on homeownership prep. So we will share the flyer out to you and, I can turn that off. We will share the flyer out to you and give you all that information. That will be available in the recording as well, which we'll post in the next 24 hours. Omar, welcome, and thank you for being here. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Izzy, and thank you everybody for allowing me to take up a couple of minutes of your busy agenda to promote our event. So good morning, everyone. I just wanted to share, well, just a quick background on myself. I'm a financial advisor on a team based in Stamford. We work a lot in the non-for-profit space, but one area also that we are very passionate about is around financial education and literacy. And so every month we put together a different webinar or workshop around a financial topic that's particularly relevant for that time of year. And we find come springtime, a lot of people start thinking about buying a home. We tend to see a big uptick in mortgage applications during this time. So we put together a webinar, which we're hosting tomorrow at 11:30 a.m. and at 5 p.m. You're welcome to attend either one. And on the flyer has the WebEx links for you to register to attend. And it's going to be on preparing for home ownership. Now, a couple things we're going to cover, but the ultimate goal is we want to make sure that people avoid buyer's remorse, that they don't get into something that they didn't know everything that they should have going into it. So they want to get ready for home ownership. And we want to first off determine if buying a home is right for you. From there, we like to talk about, well, what do you need to buy a home? Talk about the credit score, the different components that go into a credit score, setting a budget for home ownership and being aware of how much your monthly debt is to your income and that rate and how critical that ratio is. And all the upfront costs that come with purchasing a home. It's not only just a down payment, but there's closing costs, there's other fees, potentially, there's moving costs, sometimes even renovation costs. And to make sure you take all of that into account when you're going into that home buying process. We're then going to cover mortgages. So our parent company, Bank of America, is the second largest bank in the world. We have a very large amount of different types of mortgage options for clients. But first off, we'll talk about the basics of the mortgage and the different ones that are out there that could be most suitable for your unique situation. We'll cover what it means to be pre-qualified for a mortgage versus pre-approved and why it's so important to get pre-qualified ahead of time. And then the home loan process. Once you get that pre-qualification, you get that offer accepted, and then the underwriting process kicks off from there and right up till the closing when you're actually buying the home and you're getting the keys. And then lastly, we like to cover finding your new home. We all love spending a little time on Zillow or Realtor.com looking at homes, but this is really when you're taking the next step and you're actually going to start looking at the homes, going to open houses. You want to set your price range. You want to set your wish list. One wish list for me, which may be a little bit boring, but I thought was really important, was getting natural gas heat for my home as opposed to other items. But what's specific to your wish list? Finding the right real estate professional, somebody who has a good knowledge for that specific market is extremely important. And then lastly, understanding there's different down payment and cost savings programs available. Sometimes they're at the state and local level, some non-for-profits, perhaps your employer, there's the FHA, the VA if you're a veteran, and also through Bank of America, there's actually grants and programs for down payment assistance. So we want to be able to walk you through and make sure that you're aware of all the different programs that are available for you when you're buying that home and finding the best mortgage for you and seeing what's available for your unique situation. So once again, we're going to be holding our webinar tomorrow, 2 sessions at 11:30 a.m. and 5 p.m. for whichever one you're able to attend. Both my teammate and I are Spanish speakers. For those of you that want to speak afterwards, we could certainly accommodate and do so in Spanish to be able to talk about your situation. And at the end of the webinars, we always allow for some time for Q&A. So feel free to come with as many questions as you'd like.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Omar. I don't see that there's any questions in the chat right now. Oh, wait, hold on. One just popped up. Will this be recorded if you can't make any of those times available?
Unfortunately, no. We don't get the ability to record our sessions. There are certain restrictions in the financial industry preventing us from doing so, but we can set up individual sessions with people who cannot attend. My email address and phone number is on the flyer. If you can't attend, we can set up an individual session for you.
Why don't you give me your email right now and I'll stick it into the chat. Is it omar.dinar
Yes.
at
ml.com.
ML?
Yes.
Merrill Lynch. Great. That is in the webinar, in the chat. Can folks write to you in Spanish as well?
Yes.
Okay. And is there any list for future, if folks can't make these, do you keep a list for future sessions so that people can get notice or any of that?
We do. So for anybody that would like to get on our distribution for our monthly sessions, we just need your email address and we can add you to that, or you can keep an eye out on our on our individual and team websites where we post our events, where we have already posted details for our May and June events. But right now, yes, you could certainly be on our distribution list for that.
That's great. And yeah, folks are, there's a request here for hosting one after 6 p.m., which makes it easier for, folks here are working in childcare and they have a hard time getting away from the children. So after 6 makes it a little easier. So if that is something you can do, can people email you to set something up?
Yes, just email me and we could set up one-on-one sessions. If there's a large enough group that everybody would like a 6 or 7 p.m. session, then we could just set up a third session for a broader audience as well.
Perfect. All right. Omar, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you all. Have a great day.
Have a great day.
Thanks for having me.
All right, let's move on. I'm going to turn it over to Ava right now, just to give us a recap on last week's Early Childhood Advocacy Day at the Capitol, tell you all about some upcoming events, and then we'll turn it over to Merrill to give a legislative update on what progress has been made in the session or where the stalls are. So Ava, you're up.
So in less than, I want to say 48 hours, 2 days, we were able to get more than 50 people signed up, and we had 31 people able to join us. Apologies to those of you who are on your way or coming to the evening session because of Yukon Day and other events that were happening on that day of advocacy. The legislative session did finish and wrap up a little earlier than expected. So we did have to send some of you home and you were on your way, and some of you were not able to come because we ended a little early. But nonetheless, we were able to talk to, what's our running count? Let me go back to our chat here. I think it was over 20 legislators.
I think it was close to 35 actually.
Okay, I'll take it. We were sharing in our group chat here how many people we talked to. So I'll take Izzy's word for it rather than navigating our chat. We also, in including those legislative conversations, we also talked to the governor and the governor's chief of staff. So I feel like we made a point, but it'd be even stronger if we continue talking to the same people, same legislators, the governor, of course, and have a multitude of all of your voices amplified by being on message and talking to them about funding. Because even though we had a successful turnout last week, we still haven't heard just yet about legislators or the governor adding money into early care and education for this year. Unfortunately, we are still at zero. So to ensure that we're moving the needle and we get something this year, today we're going to be launching a letter to the governor and to legislative leadership. You be aware if you are on the Child Care for Connecticut's Future email list and text blast list that you are going to receive a link for that letter. I could also connect with Merrill and see if we can get it on the EC listserv later today as well. And that's just another way for all of you to share your story, persuade the governor and the legislative leadership that more funding and funding this year does matter. So heads up on that. Please share far and wide. If you have a cousin who is kidless, doesn't matter. We want them to sign on. We want them to also send it. If you have, a neighbor who is retired and elderly, we also want them to share far and wide and sign on and send this letter. So literally anybody, everyone. We only have 2 weeks before session is over, not much time at all to get something, because zero is not good. It is really bad, but you guys know that more than me. I don't have to remind you how bad zeros look like in early care. But again, awesome job, everyone who came to the Capitol, and we look forward to having more legislative advocacy days, and I'll pass it to Merrill because he has one coming up.
Ava, did you want me to share the link to that letter?
Go for it. Today's the day. We can.
Great. Merrill, you're up. Oh, you're muted.
All right. I wanted to try and make this real. What does zero mean? Right now, Care for Kids has 20,300 children on it. And the budget that was approved last year for this coming year, starting in July, is budgeted at 18,500. That is 1,800 fewer children that are on Care for Kids now. So what does that mean? It means that unless more money is put into the Care for Kids budget, that the wait list is going to get much longer. That essentially what's going to happen is the only people who will get called, who will get on to Care for Kids, are those people in the priority group, children who are homeless or children who are in the DCF adoption system. And everybody else will just sit there because they're going to have to use the attrition of families coming up for redetermination and falling off the program as the way to bring down the list, not just to 18,500. If they start above the budgeted amount, they've got to bring the total down well below the budgeted amount by the end of the year in order to average 18,500 for the whole year. So think about what it's going to be like next fall when you are enrolling a new crop of preschoolers because you've got a batch going off to kindergarten, that those families are not going to be able to get Care for Kids. What's that going to do to your budget? What's that going to do to your enrollment? This is the time that we all need to be calling our legislators and letting them know that this is a disaster waiting to happen. And if you don't know your legislator or don't have your legislator's cell phone, let me put into the chat let me get to everybody. This is how to find your legislator. Click on that and find your state rep and your state senator and give a phone call. You'll talk to an aide or to voicemail, but they need to start hearing that Care for Kids is a real problem and that we need to put some money into Care for Kids, or everybody's going to be hurting come this coming fall and winter as we go through a whole bunch of enrollment with no new Care for Kids families. So now we also mentioned an advocacy day. The Alliance has our monthly meeting on the 2nd of May. It's always the first Thursday of the month. This month we will be meeting at the Women's League in Hartford at 9 in the morning, and then afterwards going over to the Capitol. This will be in the Thursday in that last week of session, the last full week, and then there's the weekend and the last few days. We don't know. They may come up with a budget this week. It may slop into next week. We don't know yet, but that's why it's important for all of you to call your legislators today. Click that little link, how to find your legislator, and look up your state representative and your state senator, not your member of Congress, not your US senator, but your state representative and state senator. Call and leave a message with them. Ask them to call you back, but to let them know that you're calling about Care for Kids. Let me find the link for, I know that a daytime or morning event for an advocacy day is hard for many of you, but for those of you who do have the option of lining someone up to cover for you while you come to the Capitol, we would love to have you at the Alliance meeting at 9 in the morning, followed by advocacy day at the Capitol. So for folks who are driving a long distance, we can get you a link so you can listen to the meeting while you're driving up and meet us at the Capitol. Here is the link to RSVP for that event. Let me just, here we go. Okay, so happy to take any questions if anybody has any.
I want to just highlight what John said, which is that when legislators get more than a handful of calls, you hear them say that their phone is ringing off the hook. And that's true. It doesn't take much for them to feel like we're completely overwhelming them, which is great. That's not to say that you shouldn't do it. It's to say you should, because even if we don't get 1 million people doing it, it actually makes a difference. Okay, let's see. Let me look in the question Q&A. It doesn't look like we have any at this moment. So we've got the RSVP to sign up for the 5/2 advocacy day in there. We've got, let's see, how to find your legislator. We've got the letter. Let me tell you that this letter takes less than a minute to do, especially if you've done it before, because it autofills. You literally put your name and email town in there, and then it makes the letter for you. You hit use my voice or share my voice, something like that, and it sends it off to them. It couldn't be any faster. So take this time right now and just do it. Get it done with. Let's get, we've got, 150 people here today. We could have 150 letters to them in the next 10 minutes. So I'm challenging you all to get that out right now. Okay, sorry about that, Merrill. That was a little bit of a divergence.
So doing the letter and making a phone call, 2 phone calls, one to your state rep and state senator. The message that we need to get to legislators is without additional money, Care for Kids is going to close. That's going to make it hard for families looking for care. It's also going to make it hard for childcare programs trying to operate without any stabilization money and fewer families able to afford the cost of care. And what our ask to them is talk to leadership about getting some money for Care for Kids into the budget. It's just a real, they need to be hearing from legislators, need to be talking to leadership, and leadership needs to be hearing from their membership that this is something that they care about, because they're hearing about nonprofit contractors for the state who provide all sorts of other services besides childcare. They're hearing from the universities. They're hearing from their municipal leaders. They're hearing from other people, but they need to hear more from us.
Kim is asking, will you be, or can you discuss the proposal or maybe even past bill regarding Care for Kids covering ECE staff childcare costs?
So because they have not reopened the budget, and they are not reopening the budget, because when the budget is controlled by a bunch of things, but one of them is something called the spending cap. The spending cap limits the growth in state spending to the inflation rate or personal income growth, whichever is larger. Well, inflation was running pretty high last year. So when they calculated what was the spending cap going to be, they were basing it on the high inflation rate that we had last year. There are legislators who would like to spend $300 to $400 million more than the spending cap will allow us to do, and they were trying to figure out a way to do that this year. When they looked at reopening the budget, they realized they were going to have to revise downward the spending cap because inflation has cooled somewhat. So they were going to, instead of being able to spend 300 or 400 million more, they were going to have to reduce the budget by 30 million. So they said, okay, we're not doing that. There is still a couple $100 million in ARPA money. It's one-time money. It has to get spent by the end of the year. That's the money that's in play right now. And so they're looking at how to spread that around a bunch of different priorities. And I keep hearing childcare is sort of like the next one, but we're, like the fourth one, but we're only going to fund 3. That's our issues. We need to up the priority level for childcare. And, we'd all love to see more stabilization grants, but Care for Kids being closed for, ostensibly closed, just a wait list getting much longer, will have impact across the board for everybody. Family childcare, center-based childcare, for-profit, nonprofit, everybody will be impacted by Care for Kids being closed. So let me just try and take a look at
Someone's asking about 5051, which would provide funding for stabilization funds for programs and end upfront quarterly payments for programs. Someone's also commenting that ARPA money has to be allocated by the end of the year and spent by the end of 2025. Francesca says, I asked Beth about the child care fund, and she said the governor may not be able to put money into it. And someone else says, I agree, Care for Kids should be the priority.
Yeah. So 5051 was the governor's bill that was to create the combined early start program that would combine school readiness with CDCs, switch that all over to a contracted system. All of the bills that have gone to the Appropriations Committee have essentially had everything that had any fiscal note, anything that was going to cost something, stripped out of it. And whatever is going to cost something is going to get negotiated in a budget deal between legislative leadership and the governor, primarily using that ARPA money. And we'll get, the things that don't cost money, that are just things like, paying prospectively versus in arrears, or that kind of stuff, that those things have a chance, but obviously the stuff that we were most interested in was more money, and that is pretty much out of the picture here. We need to make some noise about trying to get some money. Otherwise, the only additional money programs will get was stuff that was already included in the budget last year. So school readiness and CDCs were going to get a rate increase for preschool. Still only takes you to about 2/3 of the actual cost of providing care. So let me just see if there are any other questions here.
I think that's it for questions.
Okay.
We also have, I know Ava wanted to talk about the National Day of Action, and I'd like to spend a minute just talking about what's happening next week. Ava, can I pass it to you?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Merrill.
Thank you, Merrill. We have so for all of you who participated on our morning without childcare, if it was your first time, then how amazing was that, right? My goodness, that 1,000+ people rallying together asking for funding. It was truly inspirational. And so inspirational that when we started 3 years ago, it inspired folks, providers and parents and grandparents all over the nation to do the same thing in their own state. So there is a national day of action, and that's Day Without Childcare. The day is going to be May 13th. I will give a shout out to Tashiana O'Connor, who is our lead here in Connecticut. She reached out to us and said, what can I do nationwide? We got to do something big. And I'm like, yep, Tashiana, you're on it. So May 13th is our day of action. What we'd like to do, since we already had our Connecticut morning without action, what we'd like to do to celebrate the day, be part of the day, and ask the federal delegation for funding is have a couple of volunteers, a few volunteers to, let me know when you're available, and then we can set up conversations with our federal delegation. So not all of them are going to be here in Connecticut that day, but it'd be great to set up some Zoom calls or possibly go to their office and talk to their team about why federal funding matters and how that federal funding can really assist here in Connecticut. More recently, on the federal side, there's been a conversation about how much money they could give through the block grants. It seems that we're going to get 5.5 million. Hopefully the commissioner can advocate for more, but for the time being, it looks like we're going to get 5.5 million more dollars into block grants. For those who are unfamiliar of what block grants do, some of that money goes into programs like Care for Kids, right? So of course we want more to support the programs that already exist. If you are interested in talking to your federal delegation, your congressperson, your or all our senators, then please let me know. You can write us in the chat right now. And for everyone else who is not available to be part of that in-person or Zoom conversation with our federal delegation, then we would love to do a social media storm, doing some hashtags of Fix Childcare, hashtag Day Without Childcare, so we could truly be part of the movement. So let us know, and we will send you more information about May 13th, Day Without Childcare.
Great, thank you. And then do you want to talk about what's happening next week? Monday.
Oh, I'm like, what's happening next week? Session? Sure, I will. So next Monday on our Early Care Connection, this call, we have our special guest commissioner, Beth Bai. We love when she's on. She is a fountain of information, and she's coming with her team and a very, very in-depth presentation of what's happening now with the implementation of the Blue Ribbon Panel. So if you haven't had a chance to be part of the in-person listening sessions that happened in Stamford or in New Haven, then let's watch it live here on Early Care Connection to talk to the commissioner and talk about Care for Kids money, talk about what the future looks like, all of those things that impact you day to day. And we really do hope that you can tell your fellow educators, your peers here in the early care world, that we've got a big conversation. We want to pack the house. Usually we have like 200, 250 people on these calls. This is a great opportunity to get those numbers up to our 700 mark, because it's a big conversation about what's happening here with Blue Ribbon Panel and OEC. Back to you, Izzy.
Great. Thank you. And just to update everyone, we have about 25 folks here who have submitted letters already. So thank you so much for that. That was quick and easy. And by my count, about 125 more of you to go in the next few minutes. Okay, we do have a couple of questions on the legislative session. So I'm going to go back for a minute. George is asking if you can explain, if they are not planning to open the budget, how can we get more money for Care for Kids? You're muted, Merrill.
They can allocate some ARPA money to go into Care for Kids. We've been using ARPA money. That's part of what got us up to the higher enrollment levels over during COVID, was to use ARPA funds. So they could put another influx of ARPA money. We are going to eventually have to deal with the fact that ARPA money will come to an end, and state funding is we're gonna have to figure out a way to get some more state money into the system. Okay, what's the next question?
2 more questions. And also just to point out that Joanne had also flagged that both 5002 and 5051 had a little bit of movement today, both put on the calendar, I believe. So they are still working on things.
Yeah.
Okay, what bill has the language changing the name of the state programs to Early Care Connecticut? Let's see, and lets the state take over the payments. Is there any QSM changes?
Okay, so 5051 is the governor's bill, the early start bill. It also included changes around the QSM language that was stripped out in appropriations, but my understanding is that it's going to get put back in when it comes on the floor. So the fact that it has been put on the calendar is a step in the right direction. It really all boils down to they've got a limited amount of days before the end of the session. And things where there's general agreement between Democrats and Republicans are easier to move. This bill did come out of the Education Committee with bipartisan support. Okay, so the question from Eileen Costello, 5151 had money for new positions at OEC to cover the cost of overhauling the state payment system. Is that still there? Short answer is no. I think what they did was to delay implementation by a year, essentially say we're going to do it. Whether or not that part moves forward is really a question of whether somebody gets picky about whether or not the legislature can encumber future legislatures to spend money. They do it all the time, but say they don't want to. So that's the issue.
All right. I think that might be the end of our questions for the morning. Anything else that either of you would like to cover before we end this morning's webinar?
Yep. Love
Okay.
to have people show up for the Alliance meeting in Hartford on next Thursday, the 2nd. And not this coming Thursday, but the following one. This is open to new members. We'd love to have, generally had the rule that folks who aren't members who would like to come give us a test drive can come for a couple of meetings and see how things work. In the old days before the pandemic, we used to meet monthly in person. We went remote, and now we are coming back to doing hybrid meetings where we're doing meetings around the state in person with a hybrid link for folks who don't want to drive from the other side of the state. So because we wanted to get people to Hartford and up to the Capitol, this coming meeting is going to be in Hartford. We will be doing them around the state as we proceed through the summer and fall.
Great. Thanks, Merrill.
Yep.
Thanks, Ava. Thanks, Sandra. That's it for today. We've got a big meeting on Monday, so please mark your calendars. If you haven't had a chance to click the link and submit your letter, about 30 of you have, please save that bookmark and do it at some point today if you can. Share it out on social media as well. These little pushes do help. And for anyone who is marking Passover this week, I hope that you have a meaningful and a meaningful time with your family. It's a tough year for everyone. So anyway.
And happy Earth Day.
Which one?
Today is Earth Day. Happy Earth Day.
Today is Earth Day. That's great.
Go plant some peas or,
That's right.
feed some worms or do something. I don't know.
If you need gardening tips, you should ask Merrill. He's a very good gardener.
He is. Yes. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next week. Thanks again.